we don't really know what causes cancer. So what we say is that there are risk factors that we know. So I can say this or that causes cancer. So there are risk factors. Like I said, you can have alcohol, or smoking, or exposure to chemicals, pesticides, or having diabetes or pesticides. So these can be risk factors, but we don't really say that this causes cancer, because obviously we have cases where you've heard of people that smoke for 20, 30 years, but never develop, and they're fine. And you have someone that never smokes at all, but maybe has a...
Why is that?
So again, that's why I'm saying cancer is it's complicated.
It's a little dynamic.
Yeah, so...
Welcome to Let's Talk Science with Thuli. I'm your host, Thuli, and in this podcast we connect science to you, the people, because really what we're seeing in the world today is how important science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are, and how they are basically in the forefront of solving pretty much all of the problems that we're currently facing now are being solved with scientists and engineers and innovators in the forefront. And in this podcast, we basically bring these scientists and these engineers to you, and we speak to them about what problems they're solving, how these problems actually affect you, and really what solutions they're coming up with in their labs, in their respective labs. So today I am very excited to have with me a colleague from the University of the Witwatersrand in the same faculty as me, and probably the same school, pathology, as me as well, or maybe not, maybe he's surgery, he's going to tell us. But I have with us Dr Emmanuel Nweke. Welcome, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for having me, Thuli. It's really a pleasure.
So Emmanuel, tell us a little bit about where you're from, just a little bit of a background to how you found yourself here.
Thanks, Thuli. Like you said, my name is Emmanuel Nweke. I am originally from Nigeria. And so I did my undergrad and a BSc in honors in Nigeria in a university called Madonna University. And I came here in 2014. I started my master's in molecular and cell biology 2014. By 2015 I finished, and then started my PhD, obviously related to cancer biology, specifically pancreatic cancer. And I finished in 2017, where I started a postdoc, also in the Department of Surgery in the School of Clinical Medicine. And I had about a 4-year postdoc, and after which I have been employed now by the university as a scientist in the department.
I asked you how you got here. I thought you drove here.
Oh.
So, what is the interest with cancer?
So I think cancer is one of those diseases that are actually quite difficult to, we hear stories, whether it's through movies or public platform where, whether it's entertainers or celebrities or whoever, have been diagnosed with this cancer. And we can just watch whether it's from afar or from close. Some of us, some people actually have relatives or friends that have had cancer. But, the bottom line is that you can actually see how really bad, should I say, cancer is. And I think in most cases, people can't just help it. You can't do anything about it. You just you literally have to just wait to die. And I think that's problematic. So I think it's that curious to say, we don't really have, do we have to wait to die, or if anyone has cancer, do the person have to wait to die? There could be a way that we could help. There could be a way that maybe in the future we could be able to provide some kind of cure or solution to cancer as a disease.
But Emmanuel, in Africa, has cancer always been this bad, do you think, or is it becoming more and more prevalent?
I think that's a good question. See, so obviously I would think that it's probably becoming more prevalent because of the lifestyle. Because obviously, when it comes to cancer, lifestyle issues, like alcoholism, drinking, obesity can actually be linked to cancer. But I also think that obviously with time we are being introduced to new technologies, to diagnose the cancer.
So you think that maybe before people were not presenting as much?
I think so, because obviously maybe decades ago someone could have cancer and die from cancer, but we don't really know what was. You just say the person is sick or something else. But now we probably are able to have the technologies to say actually this person has cancer.
There's more access.
Yeah, so I think it's between more access to knowing what the disease is, which is cancer, and also the fact that obviously we have more and more changes in the lifestyle. We're more exposed to dangerous chemicals.
What causes cancer?
Okay, so that's a complicated question because we don't really know what causes cancer. So what we say is that there are risk factors that we know. So I can say this or that causes cancer. So there are risk factors. Like I said, you can have alcohol, can be or smoking, or exposure to chemicals, pesticides, or having diabetes or obesity. So these can be risk factors, but we don't really say that this causes cancer, because obviously we have cases where you've heard of people that smoke for 20, 30 years, but never develop, and they're fine. And you have someone that never smokes at all, but maybe has a...
Why is that?
So again, that's why I'm saying cancer is it's complicated.
It's a little dynamic.
Yeah, so for example, the person that doesn't smoke that develop cancer, lung cancer for example, might have a history of cancer in their family, or
is it also hereditary?
Yes, very much so. So it actually increases the risk of cancer. If you have, for example, a member of the family that has cancer, then probably your risk for that cancer would be increased.
Is there a way to tell? Let's say I don't know if there was someone in my family that had cancer. Is there a way for me to test and see if perhaps I am predisposed to it or have a high chance of getting cancer?
So obviously one of the first things is to ask you, do you have anyone, member of your family that has so and so cancer? And if you say yes, that makes the job easier. Another way of obviously is through genetic testing. So there's certain genes, for example in pancreatic cancer we know for sure that there's certain genes that are linked to familial history of cancer. So obviously yes, more and more so even in South Africa we having genetic testing for cancers, for example.
Is that being done in South Africa?
So it's being done. Obviously it's not really much widespread. Obviously we want it to be much more widespread, but you can actually go and test for specific genes and to be sure, like for example in case of breast cancer, known genes such as BRCA1 and BRCA2, you can do testing for them and available in some private and public labs where you can test for this particular gene, and if you have a mutation for this gene, obviously increases your risk for getting.
What do we mean by mutation for this gene?
So genes are obviously what basically direct some of the processes in our body, just to put it in a very simple term. So if there's a change in the gene, in the sequence, so for example if there's supposed to be a particular gene sequence there and changes to something else, that could be a potentially bad mutation, right? That's a change. So mutation is a change in a sequence. In
the makeup of the gene, and the genes are made up of a particular sequence.
Exactly. So if that changes, and it could be for different reasons, then you might have a mutation. And sometimes a change, a mutation might not necessarily lead to anything horrible, but in some cases, and we've been able to identify what specific mutation, for example, could increase your risk for certain kind of cancers. Yes.
And specifically you work with pancreatic cancer.
Pancreatic cancer, yeah.
What is pancreatic cancer?
So basically it's a cancer of the pancreas, and obviously we want to know what a pancreas is. So it's quite an important organ because it has several functions. For example, it produces enzymes. These are proteins that are able to break down. So if you eat your pap or your rice, for example, and the way it breaks down in the body is through enzymes. And the pancreas produces that enzyme. That's one of its functions.
The pancreas produces the enzyme
that breaks down this food that you eat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the functions. Another function is that it produces hormones such as insulin. So we probably heard about insulin. It's quite important because of diabetes. So if it's deficient, it leads to diabetes. So it produces insulin, and it ensures that we have. It also produces a hormone called glucagon. So basically, insulin and glucagon, they balance the glucose levels in our body.
Right.
And if there's a problem, for example, with insulin, you have high glucose content, which could lead to diabetes. So it's a very important organ in the body because of its functions. It's several functions, like I just mentioned.
And then if there's cancer in the pancreas, there's like an abnormal growth of cells within the pancreas that then limits the functioning of the pancreas, which then becomes problematic because then the regulation of insulin,
for example,
or the balancing of glucose in your body is then not carried out, and then also your food is perhaps not being digested.
Exactly. So if there is a tumor, which is an abnormal growth of cells within the pancreas, it could actually lead to what you just said now about affecting these different functions within the pancreas.
Can we prevent it?
Prevent the cancer.
Can we prevent pancreatic cancer?
So again, I think it comes. Let's go back to the risk factors of pancreatic cancer, right? And there are several risk factors. Like I said, we don't say causes because we don't really know what causes, but there are risk factors. So for example, one of them is advanced age, for example. We find that most people that have pancreatic cancer are for 5 years and above, right? More males get pancreatic cancer. Being black is a risk factor, and I think we'll come to that. I think that's why the work we do is actually quite important.
Yeah. So
being black is a risk factor for pancreatic cancer.
Sure. Being black is tough. It's a risk factor for a lot of things.
Yeah. So things like obesity, diabetes, there's a disease called chronic pancreatitis, which is an inflammation of the pancreas.
Yeah.
You also have bacteria such as Helicobacter pylori. It's a well-known bacteria that causes, that's involved in a wide range of GI cancers.
Hypertension and so on. Yeah.
We also have hepatitis B virus also is a risk factor. So these are the different risk factors. So when you say if we can avoid them, and also having a history of pancreatic cancer is also a risk factor and stuff like that. So if you be exposed to chemicals and insecticide, pesticide, so avoiding pancreatic cancer.
It's hard. It sounds difficult.
Yeah, so because it has all these risk factors
that are related to lifestyle as well.
Lifestyle, exactly.
And sometimes work. I mean, if you're a farmer, if you work in a commercial farm and you're exposed to pesticides, how do you, and maybe you don't even know which pesticides contribute more or less to that, or what else they could contribute to.
So I think the best we can do is to try to, if we can, avoid, try to make good lifestyle choices, for example, obesity or avoiding some certain chemicals, we can do that. But there are some like, advanced age or things like that, we don't really know. Okay, so I just want to talk about why pancreatic cancer is quite a deadly cancer, and just to let you know about some of the stats we have. So, pancreatic cancer is, currently it's the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths worldwide. So it's quite devastating because, it's been shown that up to 50% of the patients that are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer would die within 6 months. Yes, so it's quite devastating. If you look at the 5-year survival rate, it's only about 10 to 11%. And compared to other cancers.
That's the survival rate?
Yes. 5 years.
That's with treatment, with chemo?
Yes. So again, I think that we'll just come to that now because it's also very resistant to any kind of treatment. Yeah. Chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiotherapy. And currently, the only curative measure is surgery, right?
To remove the pancreas.
To remove the
tumor.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that can only be done if it's caught in the early stage, we call it resectable cancer, which again, in most cases, is not caught in the early stages, it's caught towards the late stage.
How do you, what are some of the symptoms that a person can perhaps look out for early detection?
So that's an excellent question, because symptoms we have are things like abdominal pain, back pain, loss of weight, fatigue, and changes in your urine or stool. But you see, these are really very generic symptoms, right? So that's the problem right there. And I think that's why it's important, and I think this brings me to the kind of work that we do.
Sorry, do these symptoms present early?
So that's the thing. Good question. They don't. In most cases, they present towards their
You are making this sound so tragic.
So that's why that's the crazy part, because the symptoms tend to present when towards the late stage.
When it's too late.
Yeah, and not the early stages. So I think that's why we need basically three things when it comes to pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
We need, first of all, we need early diagnosis, because in any kind of cancer, not just pancreatic cancer, if you catch the cancer early, if you are able to diagnose the cancer early,
you can treat.
And there'll be more chance of survival, right, when you treat early. So we need to be able to have good, diagnostic biomarkers. So biomarkers are basically what, I should be able to take a blood sample or urine sample and go and test it in the lab and say if this person has pancreatic
By
cancer.
trying to find a specific biological molecule,
yeah.
And that's what you're referring to as a biomarker.
And that molecule could be a protein, it could be a gene, it could be a metabolite, it could be.
But we know that in your sample, if we find that means you have pancreatic cancer.
Yes. So we need something that's very specific and sensitive
to pancreatic cancer.
To pancreatic cancer. It's just like how you take someone takes an HIV
test, and you look for P24.
Yeah, you know for sure that if it's positive, it's HIV and not some other random disease or something else.
Yeah.
So we need something that's specific
that's
and
very
sensitive
specific,
for that disease. They could catch it quite early. Another thing about pancreatic cancer is that it is very difficult to treat. Right, like I said before, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, which
radiotherapy don't work.
Which works in most cancers, it doesn't work for pancreatic cancer for a host of reasons, biological reasons. So I think that brings us to looking forward to, I think one area I'm also interested in is targeted precision medicine, where even if you're doing radiotherapy, we need to ensure that this is targeted towards the tumor itself, or we need to ensure that chemotherapy, the drugs that we use, we need to ensure that it's specific to the patient, because again there's a dogma.
Right. So sorry to cut you there. So when you're speaking about precision medicine, you're saying that so that it's more specific to the pancreas, but really precision medicine is about the patients themselves and their genetic makeup, right?
It is about the patient. So I was just coming to that where I said no two tumors
are the same.
So you could have the same age, the same demographic, same gender, and the same stage of the cancer, but the mutations molecularly is different. You must also remember that when chemotherapeutic drugs, for example, target a particular gene
because
or
of genetic makeup, and our genetic makeup is different.
Yes,
and how tumors grow is related to your genetic makeup and my genetic makeup.
Exactly. So we need to ensure that when we give a patient a particular kind of treatment, that treatment
is specific to
that patient, and that is the whole point of precision medicine.
And then what's the work that you're doing?
Okay, so the work we do is try to really, first of all, I did mention that being black is a risk factor for pancreatic cancer. But you see, the problem right now is that you look at several online, whether it's publication or a lot of work that's been done in the past, even on pancreatic cancer. And I think this is an issue for not just pancreatic cancer, but cancer in general. There's still a lack of representation of African, black people, when it comes to genomic information, for example. And this is getting worse, actually. A recently published paper in Nature by Fatuma and colleagues, actually last week, there's been a decline of African genomic information, and that's a problem, because if this particular group of patients have increased risk, and again, increased risk of a disease like pancreatic cancer, we should be able to study them more, right?
Yeah, but if we don't get the samples to study their genetic material...
But we're not studying them more. So I think that's why...
Why? Why are we not studying black people more?
So it could be a host of reasons, and you know, we need things like funding, things like infrastructure.
Is there enough awareness around black people presenting for like genetic material, the collection of genetic material for such studies?
So again, it boils down to resources. You know, we don't really have, you know, you can't really have enough resources when it comes to research. But in our case, we sometimes struggle with funding, and that's a huge issue because, like you said, the collection of samples and processing the samples, storage, and then maybe sequencing or whatever you're looking at. This costs a lot of money. This involves people, from like in our team we have really great clinicians, we have scientists, and we have research assistants, we have technicians, and for you to bring all these things together require a lot of money. And again, you haven't even gotten to the part of actually doing the analysis itself. And obviously, also the human resources. We need experts in the field. Like I said,
do we not have enough experts in the field?
So again, it's one of those things that we do have now. There's a lot of labs coming up, especially when it comes to genomics. There's SBIMB. We have a lot of experts there. And it talks to also collaboration, but we can have more. We need more people in the space to be able to not just handle sample processing and collection and storage, but the analysis of and making sense of the data. I think that's a huge
making
issue.
Sense of the data.
Yeah, because
Emmanuel, I want to go here. There are three things you said. You said there's early detection, and then you said there's the identification of biomarkers, and then there's precision medicine. Are these the three things that are perhaps the solutions that are required for pancreatic cancer?
I would think so.
Okay.
Yes.
So which of these are you working on?
So we're working, basically trying to work across the board. Yeah. So for example, when we collect samples, tissue samples or blood samples, and we analyze them, looking for whether it's specific proteins, and these proteins could act as, for example, biomarkers.
Are you finding a protein that's consistent within pancreatic cancer
so
patients?
Yes. So we've done a lot of discovery studies now where we have maybe a panel of proteins, and we also have a panel of metabolites that we think that could be biomarkers for diagnosis and prognosis. And then we now need to do a bigger study where you have much more samples, much more, obviously patients involved to validate, what we're looking for. Because it's actually a process. You discover this maybe 2 or 3 proteins, and you have to validate in the larger cohort. And I think it speaks to also having the resources, to be able to do studies like this, because if we might manage to have resources for maybe 20, 30, 40 patients, but we, for example, obviously want to look at 100, 200, 300.
1,000, 5,000.
Yes. So we obviously would need resources for that. So one of the things we do in our lab is, looking for biomarkers at different levels, whether they're proteins or metabolites, biomarkers that could serve as diagnostic for, early detection or even prognostic, that could.
And when you say prognostic, you're saying after treatment?
No, prognostic, I mean like the different, because obviously the cancer has different stages. So like I said, early stage could be resectable, for example, where you can still take out the cancer. And we also have things like metastatic, when the cancer has spread,
It's
for
spread
example.
throughout the body, on other parts of the body.
Other parts of the body. So, we also want to be able to say, are you able to not just detect the cancer, but also distinguish between if it's resectable or metastatic?
I see.
So that's prognostic. So, but also we can also be able to find targets, new targets for treatment. So like I said, most of the drugs we have are specific to a specific gene or mutation. Obviously with the type of research that has been done, a lot of, for a while now, we're seeing that since this cancer is resistant to these drugs, are we able to maybe one day develop new targets and new drugs that could be effective?
Yeah, without the resistance that's currently being faced now.
Exactly. So another way is, why precision medicine is great to help you identify the genetics of the individual and be able to find drugs that target that. You can also look for new drugs, new targets.
I think, Emmanuel, we're gonna have to stop it there. But I think what is very clear is that there's just so much information and so much passion and drive and desire to really understand pancreatic cancer and mitigate some of these challenges that Emmanuel was talking about. But I also think that the idea of precision medicine and the cost implications are something that I wanted to get into in this episode as well. But obviously, we can't have the conversation forever. But I think it would be worthwhile to bring Emmanuel back, or find a person that can speak to us really about precision medicine and what it means in the African context, given that the African climate, or rather the African population within all 55 countries of Africa is so diverse. So what does that mean? The diversity of African people. What does it mean for precision medicine? What kind of people should we be looking out for? What kind of awareness should we be putting out there into the African continent for the collection of these genetic samples, so that we're better able to do these studies and carry out these studies that are able to assist in mitigating some of the challenges related to pancreatic cancer and even beyond pancreatic cancer? Because as Emmanuel is saying, as African people, we really are predisposed to a lot, and I don't think there's enough awareness, there isn't enough work taking place. But I learned a lot certainly about pancreatic cancer. I genuinely didn't know that it was such a big problem. I didn't know it was the third killer, as it were, where all the cancers are concerned. Neither did I know that it was so difficult to treat, So I think I've learned a lot, certainly, and I hope you've learned a lot from that. But now we're going to have a little bit of a chat around what he's doing when he's not trying to figure out how to save the world where pancreatic cancer is concerned. So I'll see you after this, where we talk #BeyondScience with Dr. Emmanuel. After this.